Motorsport. You might think it's, 2 wheels, 4 wheels, big engines, little engines, electric engines, something that you can basically sit in all the time. There's another form of motorsport that's pretty damn popular, not only here in Western Australia, but Australia and around the world. That's RC drifting. I just got just then.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that would be remote control racing. Got here Chris Mitchell today. How you going?
I'm good, mate. It's an exciting time in Perth for RC nerds, I like to call myself, and the rest of my community.
I wouldn't call them nerds, but you can call them nerds, I guess, because you're in the community, whereas I'm not in that community. I might get shot. I'm known for that sort of shit.
It's like the old saying, it's our word.
Oh, it's your word. Yeah, right. Look, coming up in Perth, bit of an event very soon.
Yeah, not too far away. It's just a couple of weeks away now. It's the Australian Championship for electric on-road red air control cars.
Okay. So it sounds like there's like a lot of different categories and shit.
There is, yeah.
Within RC cars. So
it's actually staggering how much variety there is. Electric and nitro are your two big differences. Nitro being, they run on a small glow plug motor. Electric is lithium batteries and electric motors. It's pretty self-explanatory. Then there's off-road and on-road. So off-road, you can see them like buggies. They'll do jumps like a supercross track, and they can race on dirt or sometimes even AstroTurf and carpet surfaces. On-road can run on typically a paved surface here in Australia, although you can race indoors, which is really popular through, the wetter parts of America, or during the winter months in Europe, where they'll race on a flat carpet style track, which is actually like insane traction. So the benefit of the hobby sport is you can kind of race anywhere, depending on what your location or what local tracks are available.
So would you generally find like people specialising in particular styles, or would it be...
You see little bits of that. I mean, most of us just enjoy racing red air control cars. So you'll find that I might enjoy racing electric on-road and off-road, and another guy might enjoy racing electric on-road, but he'll also race a 1/8 scale nitro buggy. Right. And given the popularity of 8 scale nitro in Australia, with the Worlds were here in Perth, we held a World Championship here in 2018 out at the Model Off-Road Buggy Club in Whiteman Park. That was the case for a lot of people. What usually happens after a World Championship is a lot of the competitors disperse into other areas, or some just stop altogether because they've done it. They've done a World Championship and there's not much more to do after that. But they people come and go. I mean, I've been through electric on-road, electric off-road, nitro, little bits and pieces. So everyone kind of floats around because at the end of the day, we just like racing cars.
Now, like on-road and off-road, there's also the other category of RC, which is drift RC as well.
Yeah.
There's a lovely gentleman, Surian in Perth, who builds these amazing models, and decks them fully out.
Yeah.
Is that just to the drift world, or do you like other categories like deck them out? And
there's certainly a few racing categories that do that. Aside from your out and out racing categories, like what a lot of people do, and they get uber competitive. There's certain scale categories, especially in electric on road, where if you break down the racing classes, there's another class called Vintage Trans Am, which even sort of competes in directly. So you're talking 70s and 80s and 90s muscle cars. They're on a scale wheel with a scale treaded muscle car tyre from that area. So they look like the old Hoosier with the staggered grooves. They handle like crap. They drive like crap, but they look cool.
So pretty much like the real thing.
Yeah. I mean, when I say handle like crap, they handle like crap in comparison to the out-and-out racing cars.
Yeah.
The same thing goes with the Formula One class. There's and it's a scale class again, so they'll have moulded front and rear wings. You'll have guys roll out there with some of the old Tamiya scale kits. You can buy the old Ferrari kits. You can, even if you really want to do it, you can buy the Tyrrell P34 kit. The six-wheeler, and you can go racing with that. But a lot of the Formula One cars, they're modelled, and people will build their own cars to a scale appearance, and then they'll get the guy that shows up that wants to go fast, and he'll build it for out racing, and they go compete on the same track.
Yeah, right. What sort of So you're known in Perth as the mouth of the motorplex,
You could say so.
the mouth of karting.
Yeah.
You're known as a mouth, but you also done pretty well in remote control
Yeah.
racing over the years. So
mean-
what have you done? What have you achieved?
There's a lot. But actually, before I became the mouth of karting or even involved at the Motorplex, I cut my teeth and built my career in commentary in radio control cars. And that came out of being a competitor as well. So when I finished up my time in karting and then racing Formula Ford, I got into racing radio control cars with a couple of friends and started competing at my local club. It started with vintage Trans Am and got into stock touring car. Before I made the move over to racing buggies, and that's where I started announcing at local race nights, and kind of went to a state championship, and then went to a national championship, and it was this wild era of every week the phone rang and it was a new challenge, and I found myself commentating the international broadcast with a company called Live RC. It was for actually the World Championship of Electric Touring Cars in Beijing, China. At
Right.
the 2008 Beijing Olympics facility. They built an RC track right at that venue, which was really cool. And that just snowballed further and further, and I went and ended up in Las Vegas, commentating the 1/8 Nitro Buggy World Championship, and then that was all kind of in the build-up to the World Championship that was here in Perth. In 2018, and I was still doing lots of my own racing at the time. I was lucky enough to compete at the World Championship in Xiamen in China for electric off-road buggies in 2017, and I've raced around the country and been fortunate enough to kind of run in the top 5, top 10 at a national level in various classes, and pick up a couple of state titles along the way. And I find myself nowadays, I was pretty much all but retired, to be honest, from racing until a few months ago when word got around and I found out that the Australian Championship for electric on-road cars, which is what I've been really into lately, was coming back to Perth for the first time since 2017. And I figured, well, it's time to have a crack and go spend all the money and do the silly things again and get back into racing and trying to go fast.
So what's a typical pathway like if we compare it to, I guess, the big boy racing, and we'll do circuit racing as an example.
Yeah.
Is typically karts, and then move into some sort of open wheeler, like a Formula Ford, Formula V, or go into XLs, and then from there move up. And if you got budgets, get bigger, faster cars.
Yeah, the sky's the limit.
What's the comparison sort of thing within radio control?
The best part about radio control car racing, if you ignore the disciplines, is the accessibility. It's open to everyone. So you can have 10-year-old kids racing against 25-year-old pros, racing against 35, 45-year-old veterans, racing against retirees. The accessibility, and whether you're, fully able-bodied and you can sit in a race car or not, you can race radio control cars. Right. That's what's so cool about it. So typical pathway for most people, if you're starting off as a kid, is you get mum and dad down at the track and you look at cars and you go, hey, mum, dad, I like this, I want to do it. And then in many cases, there is a junior category that we run. So with electric touring car racing, there is a junior touring car class, which is, like a fixed power or control power class, and you're racing against other kids that are, I think it's under 16 years of age. Then you can progress, and from then, like, touring car is an international standard. So we call it ISTC, which is International Standard Touring Car. Yep. So all the cars are pretty well the same. Body shells are, I say the same, that they all meet a standard specification. There's 20 body shells you could buy on the market that all do different things, depending on how you drive and where you're racing and the conditions, etc. But the cars are essentially all similar in a silhouette. And there's different motor classes. So you can race in a sportsman motor class, which is, we call it 21.5 sportsman here in Australia. It's open touring car, but it's limited power. So all the motors meet a certain resistance, which keeps the revs at a certain level, and you can go racing and be very competitive on a level with everyone else. Then you have 13.5 stock touring car, which is what I race in, which, again, you could race the same chassis, same bodies, tyres, the whole lot, but it's a slightly more powerful motor. So that's 13.5 turn. And in turns, it's the lower the number, the faster the motor. up until modified, which is like the outright professional category, and it's unlimited. So you can have 2-3 times the amount of horsepower in a modified car, and that's typically reserved for the pros as such. But I've seen 10-year-old kids go through the junior ranks and then go straight to modified and be uber competitive, and they've gone on to have semi-professional and even professional racing careers, almost racing for a living with radio control cars. So the sky's the limit, and what the beauty of it is I find now I'm getting older, I feel like I'm getting slower, which sucks because I'm only in my 30s.
Maybe drill cars.
It really does. But I don't get to travel much nowadays, but I find some of the kids that I used to beat 10 years ago are now racing on a national professional level, or even recently, just as early as the week just gone, the World Championships for electric off-road are actually in Sydney. And a kid that I used to beat was just in the B main, so he's inside the top 20 in the world at his home track at Hills Off-Road RC. And I'm like, I beat that kid. Once upon a time, I beat that kid. And I'm sure if I met him on the track now, he would beat the pants off me. But that's the beauty of this hobby, is no matter how old you are, there's a place you can be, and there's people you can race against. And even if you then enjoy the scale side of it, you can go race in scale classes and vintage Trans Am and front wheel drive, and which I love front wheel drive RC cars. It's fun, and Formula One and stuff like that. There's always a place you can go and find your level and be comfortable with how much you're spending, almost, even if our spouses aren't, and have
like
fun.
Real racing,
just like real motorsport. Yeah,
shouldn't call it real motorsport. It's
Full
like
scale.
a big boy motorsport.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the sort of start off budget to get into racing?
That really depends on who you talk to, and it comes down to what exactly you need. I mean, essentially, all you need is a car. So you just need a car, which I immediately put the body. You need a car to get on the track with, and then you need a radio gear. So you need a transmitter, and you can get going for as little as a few $100s if you start off in the secondhand market. Many even hobby shops that support racing programs will do like a starter pack. And it's a budget entry level car with electronics. You can get going. Some of them may run to $1,000 or $1,500. People will look at the new prices of the new shiny stuff, and that can scare you away pretty quickly. And it's not until you get further down the road and you start finding those little 1%ers that then you can start, or then you probably feel like you need to start spending all the extra money, because that's the next thing you feel like is going to make you have that competitive edge over everybody else. But yeah, you can get going for a few $100 to go and have fun, or even just get a car and go down to your local track and go compete or go driving is the key thing. Because many people that they haven't, well, a lot of people don't really work out until later on that the biggest thing holding them back on a racetrack is actually the person holding the transmitter. It's the nut behind the wheel that is the biggest manipulator of these cars, and that can usually be the number one limiting factor. It's not about motors and batteries half the time. It's drive your car, go faster that way.
What about in terms of like teams and sponsorships and all that sort of stuff? Is there opportunities within RC for that sort of thing?
There absolutely is. I mean, you go down to your local racing track now, and you'll always see guys with body shells that kind of look like this. So they're covered in branding and covered in sponsors' logos and stuff. It's very much almost an internal market. So RC companies will sponsor RC drivers. And when it comes down to sponsorship, a lot of it is just who's going to give you a discount. Or who you make friends with and whatnot. When it comes to teams, it's many times it's what car is my friend running, and do I want to go run the same car, because then I can share setup information, I can share spares, so when I thwack the wall and I break an arm, if I don't have one, my buddy does, or my friend who runs at my local track has that. For me personally, for a long time I went with sponsorships, and I was sponsored by a local hobby shop pretty early on, and they were able to stock the parts that I needed, and they gave me a helping hand with a bit of a discount. That came down to the biggest consumable in racing, tyres, and I was able to source tyres at a pretty good discount. That was Riper Hobbies back in the day. Unfortunately, they're no longer around. They kind of disappeared in 2017, 2018. But since I went on-road racing, I met a really good friend of mine now, Ryan Maker. I met him at the last Australian Championships that were here in Perth in 2017. I was announcing that race. Yeah. And he was racing in the modified A final professional level driving, and I mistakenly announced the wrong national champion. Somebody had set the computer up and the way it did the tiebreak was wrong. And I called out Jeffrey Mackey, who's also a good friend of mine now, as he was the national champion. And then it was right after Steve Harvey did that Miss Universe pageant and he called the wrong winner.
Yeah.
I felt like him. I knew how I felt, right? And I've yelled out over the mic, Jeffrey Mackey's national champion. And then I've looked at the computer. I'm like, hang on. It doesn't look right. And I've gone, results are provisional, really quickly into the microphone. Since then, Ryan's become a really good friend, and he's an importer. Initially he was just an importer and selling certain brands. And then over time, he helped me out, and he said, look, why don't you want to run my brand, run Automatics at the time. He's still a seller of the Automatics car, which is manufactured, designed by this mad, crazy Russian dude. The car is like an absolute work of art. And then it was not long after that, he said, hey, I'm going to build my own car, and I'm going to call it the SP1. And kind of when he brought that out a year ago, I said to him, no matter what you do, when you bring out your own car, I'm going to run your car. It just makes sense. I mean, you're my friend. I'm going to run your equipment. If he sells electronics, I run those electronics. If he sells tires, I run those tires. If he sells body shells, I run those body shells. And so it only makes sense that, I race with his logos on my car. So RC Maker SP1 on the side. This is actually a body shell that I had painted and done up for when I raced in Penrith. It's kind of my one interstate race a year with the Penrith District Nitro Racers Club for the Winter Champs, and they are gracious enough. They do a broadcast every year, and they sell some sponsorship. And a company from Off the Grid Caravan Hire actually joined their sponsorship campaign for this year's race, which paid for me to be there.
Nice.
And I'm there announcing, and then the club are gracious enough to let me race as well. So it's only fair that
I... You do it both at the same time?
I tried it. I had a microphone stuffed down my shirt and just had it live the whole time. Problem is when you crash, you go, oh, expletive, and then it goes out over the PA. It's not the nicest thing. But when you get to, there's guys out there that are better than me that will get a semi-factory discount, or if you get to a certain level where you're winning Australian championships or you're winning lots of races, you can get a full factory ride. So you can get chassis parts for free to X value, electronics for free to X value. There's a couple of people in Australia who are pretty much paid professionals. It's really only a very, very small handful of guys in Australia who are actually legitimately paid to go RC racing. The rest would have maybe a stake in a hobby shop, or they get stuff for next to nothing, and then they can put their racing budget into travelling. So they'll be able to travel the country and go to all of the national titles, all the state titles, and then do a couple of events through Thailand and Southeast Asia as well, which is where there's a lot of really good racing and a lot of really good tracks. But if you're good enough to run in the top 10, top 15, top 20 in the world, then there's legitimate paychecks to be made. One of the best races of the modern era, Ryan Mayfield, is it's always been rumoured that he's earned $100,000 racing RC cars professionally, but he's racing every weekend of every week of every year through the US, and which the population density and the market size in the US is obviously massive. In Australia, not so much.
Big distances as well. Yeah,
big distances to travel. I mean, Western Australia has one currently functional, currently active on-road track. Yeah. And we're lucky that it's just in Bayswater and it's kind of right there. But if you go to Sydney, there's probably, I think there's a half a dozen within a moderate drive from the central CBD in Sydney, so it's not too bad. It really comes down to where you live, where you're willing to live, and kind of what racing you want to do. But at the end of the day, it's a fun hobby.
Definitely looks more complicated than the old jet hopper that I had as a kid.
They are. There's a lot of adjustments nowadays. A lot of my friends that still come from circuit racing, some of them have done some RC stuff, or everyone who's involved in motorsports in some scope has played with an RC car at some point, because that's the kind of stuff we like. But they then look and they go, oh, what can you change on it? I'm like, everything. I can pretty much guarantee you that the car that I race right now, it probably has more adjustment than a Formula V or a Formula Ford. I can make more tuning adjustments on this car than I can make on pretty much any race car that you could see at a track right now. Everything from the simple things, ride height, camber, caster, toe in, bump steer, Ackerman settings, to differential settings, weight bias. I can change chassis flex. I have full control over the aero on the car as long as I'm using an approved body, which is homologated for racing. the position that sits on the car, the positioning of the wing, what kind of wing I run, the amount of rake I run on the car, tyre preparation, because we run tyre warmers and traction additive, which sounds crazy taboo when you mention that to a circuit racing person, because they go, what? The car weighs 1.5 kilos. What do you need tyre warmers for? I'm like, no, it's absolutely necessary. The hobby at this level is developed around that. And so you go to a track now, everyone's using tyre warmers, and they've allowed it. And once you do that, you can't really put the genie back in the bottle. So the whole industry's just developed around everybody using tyre warmers.
What's some of the, I've seen some footage of these things and they look pretty damn fast. What's the sort of speeds that you can get up to in some of these cars?
Much of that is track dependent. Modified being the fastest cars out there, even at our local track, the straight's not even 60 metres long, and modified are clipping over 100 k's an hour.
Wow.
Which is so quick that although they don't look like they would make crazy amounts of aerodynamics, there's enough force going through the rear wing that they'll typically scrape the back of the chassis under load, and they'll actually start sparking off the screw heads that sit at the back of the chassis and stuff like that. Especially if the track's bumpy and a little bit rough, like it is here in Bayswater. It's a very unique surface, even though it's asphalt. Stock cars, like my stock cars, pushing 85, 90 k's an hour, and the sportsman cars are probably pushing 70 to 75 down the straights. So, you're covering a track that I think the Nationals layout is like 260 metres on the race line, and I'm covering that in as little as 16 seconds flat, which is, it's pretty quick. It's moving,
How do you stop yourself from getting dizzy?
Well, the key thing is when you're racing, you're standing to the side of the track, so you're not standing in the middle of it. You're not spinning on the spot like control line aircraft, and you're usually elevated, so you're kind of looking down at the track, and that helps with your depth perception. Helps tell where your car is on the race line, whether you're about to plough into the other car or not, or whether you're going to make the corner and not jump the curb. But yeah, you can. I get really dry eyes when I race. So luckily, electric racing is only like 5 minutes at a time. But even then, at a national championship, I've done it before. You come down the stand and you'll kind of wipe your eyes, and everything's just flooding with tears at the moment. You're not crying, not emotional, but just haven't blinked for 5 minutes. Yeah. Just laser focused on the car for that long.
Yeah, crazy. I'm just getting dizzy thinking about it. And feeling that same laser focus, haven't blinked for ages. So car that you got in front of us, what's under that chassis?
So under here
under the body.
So under the body, I mean, they're a Lexan body shell, so they're pretty lightweight, and this one's pretty flexible. It's had a couple of crashes. But underneath this, if I put this to one side, underneath this is a pretty conventional looking four-wheel drive touring car. I don't know if you can see that, whether you can or not. Yeah. So this is a pretty conventional looking four-wheel drive touring car. Most of them are the same kind of layout. So if I hold it up here, all-wheel drive, some are shaft drive, many are belt drive. So they'll have central belts running down the center of the car. It's got independent suspension. This uses a coilover shock. Most use a coilover shock that just kind of stands up. This car, however, is a little bit different. It actually uses a lay-down shock absorber that uses a cantilever setup, similar to a pushrod suspension in an open wheel race car, or even like the Nick Link you'd see on things like a Radical sports car and stuff like that. A lot of touring cars just use a conventional upright shock that just mounts from the chassis down to the arm.
There we go, finally in focus.
Yeah. So they're pretty nifty, and there's a lot of very small parts. We're talking all the power is transmitted through these drive shafts, which is a 1.6 millimeter pin. It's holding that drive shaft together. And as far as simple construction, they'll go down. So usually the bulk of the weight in the car is the lithium battery off to the side. And then that runs through the speed controller. I don't have any wires here. This is actually a bit of a dummy speed control because I blew mine up. So I've got a new one on the way. Power comes from the battery into the speed control, which takes the signal from the receiver, which comes from the radio. And then it sends the power through motor wires into the motor that runs the car, and then just a pretty typical steering servo to do the steering control. And most cars are very similar in construction. If you look back 10, 15, 20 years, the cars probably look the same. but they've developed a lot since then. And every year there's a new iteration of a car, there's a new generation of car. And what seems to be the most common thing is the center of gravity is getting lower. So they're trying to package all of the weight on the car as low down as possible. And then they're trying to move all the heavy parts as close to the center of the car as possible, which is kind of physics 101 when it comes to vehicle dynamics. You're trying to reduce the amount of body roll, and you're trying to reduce, the engineering term is the radius of gyration, which sounds like a really silly term, but you're trying to get all the weight as close to the center line as possible, so then the rest of the car can rotate around that center line as freely as possible. And then more corner speed means faster lap times. Most of these cars run a rubber tyre. Some classes of car run a foam tyre, which is actually very firm, which sounds really counterintuitive, but they make the most amount of grip. Foam tyres make insane grip. Most of these are a rubber tyre with a foam insert that does the same job as what air pressure would do in your conventional tyre. So inside here is a thin foam strip that kind of holds the tyre up off the plastic wheel, and that keeps the tyre carcass from just folding up under itself. So this is an RC Maker SP1, which is my friend Ryan's car, and I'm playing around with the aluminium chassis, which has actually been pretty uncommon, especially on asphalt surfaces for many years, but it's starting to kind of become a popular trend in the world of racing. And I'm still not sure whether it's the way to go, but what seems to be the popular trend and growing in these cars is aluminium chassis for asphalt, which means it's a lower center of gravity, even steel chassis in asphalt, which can even lower the center of gravity again. And as I just mentioned, lower center of gravity seems to be the way to go. Even with the way these body shells are, they're getting lighter and lighter, which means they're getting more and more flimsy. Yeah. Which this is a 0.5 mil thick Lexan body shell, and it's already pretty thin. You can get now 0.4 and even 0.3 mil Lexan body shells, which are like paper. And I'm afraid I've got a couple of 0.4s at home at the moment. I'm preparing for the Nationals because I want to win. And I'm too competitive to save myself. And as I was cutting them out to fit my car, I was afraid I was going to rip them. They are that thin, which is only really something you would do if you're chasing. I feel like I'm chasing those last 1%ers to chase a national title. But if you're club racing or racing for fun, you just use a regular, which are 0.7 mil thick, which are like 30 grams heavier. 30 grams doesn't sound like much, but when the car weighs only 1,300 grams, then it's everything.
Now the controller.
Yes.
Looks like a little Palm Pilot.
They pretty much are. A long time ago, the best thing you could hope from your radio was that it had the right 27 megahertz crystal in it. Yeah. But these days they are kind of fully digital. They're practically iPhones with handles and controls. So you've got a full...
let's see if we can get that on the...
It's saying hello to me.
On the doohickey camera.
But yeah, they have a huge amount of digital controls. Oh dear.
Almost lost the camera. There we go.
So inside there's a whole set of menus. I can adjust the response time.
Move it that way a little bit to your... Yep. Beautiful.
So inside here I can adjust so many different variables. I can adjust the response time, even like input curves. So like you would a throttle controller where you plug that into your latest generation, Isuzu D-Max or your Hilux, whatever, and it increases the throttle response time. I can do that inside the radio to make the throttle more aggressive or more soft. I can do the same with the steering inputs as well, but ultimately it's two sets of inputs. You have a steering input from the wheel, so you turn left and right, and then you have throttle and brake input from the trigger, which is here, so throttle up and brakes, and that's about all you get, but lots of other little buttons. So I've got some idle up buttons that I use to get the car to idle up. So before I start a run, I can just hold a button. I can hold this button here with my finger as I'm walking up to the grid. And if my car's turned on, that'd take off down the table right now. So
I waiting to hear if any garage doors open.
But I use that to idle up my car so I can warm my diff up, because the diffs are filled with a silicon oil. And although silicon oil is very consistent holding its viscosity, that's what controls how stiff the diff is. So I warm the diff up so then it's consistent from the moment I put the car down on the track to the end of the run. It's at its most consistent. There's not like a warm-up phase of the car going around the track. It sounds really silly when you say it out loud, but that can be worth maybe a few tenths of a second in the first minute or two of the race. which is enough to have an advantage and not have an advantage. So now everybody does that. Yeah, there's a lot to these radios, and compared to the radio you get when you're ready to run Traxxas car that you can buy off the shelf, they are a lot more advanced, and the price tag reflects that too.
Yeah.
Some of these radio systems can run up to $1,000 now, just for the transmitter.
I mean, when you look at compare it to the price of the big boy racing, it's not that bad.
It really isn't. I mean, I've been there, done that with the single seaters and the Formula Fords, and at the ripe old age of 18, 19 years old, I was maxed out with what I could do there. And when I stepped away from racing single seaters and I had all my general income and my disposable income to put into RC racing, I could do a lot of RC racing for that money.
Imagine.
There was a period of time where I thought I was in a nirvana because I could race 3 nights a week if I wanted to, which if you've got no life and nothing else to do, that's fantastic. Then I met my now fiance and the opportunities for racing kind of taper off pretty quickly. But lately I've been putting in a lot of work and tearing up a suitable amount of equipment, doing that, practice laps and burning up tyres and body shells and spare parts. And only a couple of weeks ago, I kind of destroyed the chassis on this car just because we run the car so aggressively now. They're practically a consumable item when you're trying to race at that level. So new chassis. And then I thought, well, if I got a new one now, I'm going to need another new one for the national title. So I bought another one at like $160 for a piece of aluminium. So yeah, it can be pretty cheap. But like anything in motorsports and in a competitive nature, the sky's also the limit. I know guys there's probably a couple of guys that are going to come over from the East Coast that are likely to bring 2 fresh cars with them. And then they'll have kind of an A car and a B car to run in practice. So they can test setup changes quicker. And then they'll probably carry enough equipment with them so that doubles the budget straight away, which I'm not doing that.
So start to wrap it up. The event that's coming up in Perth.
Yes.
Plug the hell out of it.
Yeah, so if you've ever wanted to see competitive radio control car racing, which is thoroughly entertaining.
Or even if you haven't wanted to.
You should do it anyway. It's well worth a watch. So it's the Australian Electric On-Road National Championship. I think Speedy RC Hobby Shop in Queensland are presenting that. It's at West Coast Model RC, corner of Moojabing and Colwyn Street in Bayswater, just around the corner from Big Don's.
I was about to ask, is that near Big Don's?
Everyone knows where Big Don's is. Regularly, if you were to come to the track on a Saturday, you see everyone camped out eating Big Don's, which is really frustrating if you miss the order window. Because then I'm there at the same place, but I don't have Big Don's.
You know what you could do? Put a catering order in.
I reckon that's a shout. But yeah, so we're there practicing on Thursday and Friday, the 30th and 31st of October. Yep. And then the main race day is a Saturday and Sunday. Saturday is a qualifying day, and that'll sort everyone into their relative A finals and whatnot. Sunday is the main championship finals day, where we will crown some new Australian champions. It's an opportunity that doesn't come around very often here in Perth, where we only get an Australian championship kind of once every 8 years for the discipline. So the last one for these cars was held in 2017. I called it, and this year I'm racing in it. So, and there's going to be more than 100 entries that are stacked up for this event. It's going to be big. I know the local club will put in a lot of effort for it, and it's going to be really cool to see all these pro drivers from not just the East Coast, but we've got a couple of international drivers, a couple of factory drivers coming down from the Asian region, and Nico Lee out of Singapore, a phenomenal driver, and I'm pretty sure he's bringing the brand new platform from X-Ray that no one's seen yet. I think it's going to be released on social media in the next couple of weeks, and he's probably going to do his debut race with it here in Perth. And I'm sure if he wins a national title in a country that's not his home country, then he'll feel pretty chuffed with that, with a brand new car. So it's going to be a great weekend. 1st and 2nd of November. It's going to be huge. Radio said that's enough.
And the radio said that's enough.
Yeah, it didn't get a signal from the car, so it said, "Oh, you mustn't need me. I'm going to turn off." That's how smart they are.
Oh, amazing. Blow me away. Well, let's look at a different type of motorsport.
It is.
Yeah. I'm just in shock at how advanced they are since the little one I used to play with as a kid.
And I'm sure in the next 5 years or so, they're going to get even more advanced and more crazy, and I'm here for it because I love it.
Awesome. Best of luck at the titles.
Thank you, mate.
And yeah, go check out the event if you're in Perth.